Today, we're gonna look at patch 4.11. We're gonna go through all the changes. I'm gonna give you some of my thoughts. And then we're gonna look at the new variety cards, where I'm also gonna give you some thoughts. And in the end, we're gonna summarize it. So let's look at it. First, we're gonna start with standard nerfs. First, we have Janna going from 6 to 8 reduced cards to level up. Amazing change. I think it was sometimes too easy to level Janna, and this is an amazing way how to make it harder so she isn't that oppressive. She isn't that much as a mass skill on turn 4, while she still provides the same powerful thing that she does. Amazing change, and I'm a big fan of this. Second nerf for Janna, and that's Wayland dealing only 1 damage to Nexus. I'm a big fan of this. I had hit even on the wish list. This is not only also like nerf to this card, but also nerf to things like House One. So that's also something to keep in mind. And overall, big fan of this. And I think Jelena still gonna see some play, but it's gonna be a little bit weaker. But the deck's still gonna be completely playable. Third nerf, and that's for CS. CS going to 9 mana. I think this change is pretty good. I'm kind of fan of it. It's gonna make things like scouts much weaker. But for example, for things like Galio, I think this is still completely playable card, and that's something that I'm a big fan of it. As said, we might not see that much scouts anymore, but for things as Galio, it's still completely good finisher that they're gonna use. Last standard nerf being Cosmical no longer invokes with the 8 mana variant that reduces the cost. This is a big hit because very powerful thing that you could have done in the past was on turn 5 Cosmical into, of course, turn 6, for example, double obliterate or play like the 5 mana 10-10, and this is that's something that you're not gonna be able to do anymore. This is big and huge nerf, and I don't think we're really gonna see Cosmical anymore. First, Eternal nerf being Peak, going from 1 mana to 2 mana. We saw Peak already at 2 mana before, and it wasn't really played. Of course, things change, Serpent is one again 2-1, Scryer got to 3-4 and stuff. But I don't still think that this card is good. The 1 and 2 mana difference is so huge that I don't think we're gonna really see Peak anymore. And but I'm kind of fan of this change because I think Peak was a very strong card, and it was giving you so crazy value for which is 1 mana. Last nerf that is kinda listed as a adjustment, but let's be honest, it's a nerf, is timelines. Now, the units that you want to transform has to see you play the timelines. So, of course, you can do some interesting things as well. For example, now can transfer multiple units in a turn with timelines, but of course, for the cost that they have to see it. And I don't think that's enough because, sometimes you just have like 2, 3 units in hand only, and then the effect isn't that effective, right? As it used to be, because that was for the war game. And yeah, I just do think this is big nerf, and I don't really think that we're gonna see that much anymore. Now we moving into buffs. First buff is Swain going from 16 to 13 to level up. I don't think this is Anna. Sure, we have like the new 6 that we're gonna talk about later, but I don't think that's Anna. And 14 damage still, in especially standard, it's very hard to reach. So I don't really expect to see Swain still. Second buff, Dame now getting Overwhelm as a keyword. It's a cool buff, and I don't think this card is bad at all. My only issue is that what you want to play it is like with Summer and stuff, and Summer in current state is not really playable. So maybe the second that Summer gets maybe some buff eventually, we might see Dame to be played, but without that, I don't really expect that. Dedicant getting 1 point of health, sure. It's like maybe a little bit better, but I still have big concern about this card. My biggest concern is that like this doesn't have any keyword, right? Card favorite has an overwhelm, while this doesn't do really anything. It's maybe sometimes big meatball, but it costs you so many cards and it needs you to like draw into Sweep Sim and stuff. I don't think this card is just good, yeah. Broadfather being Titanic now, being 8-8. Interesting buff. I wouldn't be surprised if we see some, Titanic thingy. And especially when you go Sigil into this, and then you actually draw some dragon. It might be actually very good, to be honest. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see some play. Even maybe with things like Shivana. Shivana got a lot of buffs in the past, so maybe this might be like something. This card is not bad at all, I said. If you draw at least 1 dragon, and then like it can just go crazy. So might see some cooking with it. Will it be good? Most likely not, but it might maybe find some home. Tryndamere now being 8-6. I'm gonna be honest with you, this is just not enough. Tryndamere is still so bad, and especially with the new Titanic units that we're gonna talk about later, I don't think this is like really having any potential, so whatever buff. Varmadas being 11 mana, cool buff. Especially, how fast Varmadas takes over the game because you get so much value every turn. It's an interesting thingy. We might see some Freyot in our ramp deck. Is it likely? Once again, I don't think so, but maybe. And I wouldn't be surprised if we actually see some decent deck with Barmadas. Adele's now having 10 attacks, so you can one-shot the enemy Nexus. I think this is maybe kind of cool in Eternal, where you have like Atrocity, but in Standard, I don't think this matters at all. Arachnoid getting Fearsome, cool buff. This card didn't have like home in the past, but the card is not bad at all, so it might actually find a home now. Spirit Leech now having 2 health. Honestly, for things like Kindred Nasus in Eternal, it might be pretty good buff. For Standard, I don't think this has really home, but as said, for Eternal, this sounds pretty good. Adefri now being 6 mana 5-3, you know, kind of like a unit with a vengeance on a stick, especially when you have things like Undying. Of course, it's a deniable vengeance, so your opponent can kill your unit or something. But it doesn't sound that bad once again in things like Kindred Nasus. And the weapon from Seal and Steel now costing only 2 mana. It's a cool buff, will it matter? Most likely not. Other 3 now costing only 3 mana. Honestly, for like 3 mana, just having insane value, you know, that also can eventually become your Wincon sounds pretty good, to be honest. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see some play, and especially when you can now play Banditry into turn 4 Evelyn. That sounds pretty scary to me, so I wouldn't be surprised if Banditry maybe sees some plays again. Kata being 3-2 again, amazing change for things like Gwen. Gwen Kata might come back, you know, and of course things like Raven Bloom, you know, Raven Bloom, Katarina with Broadmain and stuff might be once again good. So good change, and I think we definitely gonna see some Katarina decks. Preservaton is now costing only 4 mana. We've seen this card in Trolls before, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see it again, especially considering that we can now go Lysandra, this guy, into Talia, you know, and that sounds pretty scary to me, so I wouldn't be surprised if we actually see it. Desert Vat now costing only 3 mana, you know, pretty good card to be honest now, because like the difference between 4 and 3 mana is big, and that's also gonna be with the next card that we're gonna talk about, but you know, this card is pretty good, you know, because like it's for 3 mana, it's spamming you 2/2/1s, you know. It can be used defensively, as well as it can be, of course, used offensively, and especially in things like Azure Ally or maybe Azure Illusion or something like that, you summon quite a lot of Sensorges, so maybe. Spirit Powder being 3 mana now. Interesting alternative from Bundle City to Inswing like from Demacia, you know. Might see some play, you know, some Ghost Worm Bundle City deck. I don't know if we have something like that, but maybe, you know, with some Poppy and stuff, and especially Eternal, it can see definitely some play. Daywender finally being 6 mana again, so we can Atrocity and Daywender in the same turn. Finally again. I don't think this is like good enough because I think Nasus is still better. But yeah, Nasus is just better. Tornado Varro now being 1 mana 1/1. Interesting alternative to things like Droplet and, you know, Ari Cannon. And, you know, maybe we're gonna see some Ionia, Bundle City, you know. I think you're still gonna play like Droplet in the deck, but maybe this is might be a set alternative to Droplet. So you're gonna play like 3 Droplets, 3 Tornado Varros. And, you know, it's gonna be another unit that you can recall. Skitter getting reverted and becoming 3/3 again. Honestly, kind of scary change because I think Fearsome, especially in Eternal, were very scary already. We saw them with, you know, Nocturne Noxus or something like that. We saw the deck and the decks were doing pretty well, especially if the meta was good. And Skitter is just kind of crazy card again. Like, it just gives you so much value on both defensive and attack turns. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see some Spider Aggro, some Fearsome Aggro again. Snapvine getting the adjustment that it's becoming 6 cost, but only triggers on play, so you cannot like use it with things like Balfis and stuff. So I would say overall it's a buff, but will it see play? I don't think so. That has been the patch. I think giving the very well-pointed nerfs on the things that definitely should have gotten them, as well giving some interesting buffs. You know, I'm down definitely to good with things like Banditry, with like things like Katarina, and of course with the new variety cards. So let's look at them. First, big Rusticles card. If you haven't seen it yet, there's amazing articles about story of this card and stuff. I definitely recommend reading it. It's gonna be in the description. But yeah, this card over for 4 mana being 3/3, that summons 1 mana 1/1. That on support grows me to my supported ally stats this round. It's very interesting, and especially for 4 mana, putting a lot of pressure, you know, and maybe potentially pushing a lot of damage. It's kind of interesting. Of course, my issue that I have with this card is that I don't really know where I would play it, but I can definitely see that if we find some home, this card can be very, very powerful. Next, we have Enraged Firespitter, 6 mana, 8/4 Challenger that on place deals 2 to an enemy and 2 to an enemy Nexus. Also, it's elemental, so you can maybe like use it with things like Delusion stuff, but I don't think it's gonna be a case. Interesting card. I don't think this card is bad at all. I've seen a lot of people being like, this card is awful and stuff. I don't think that. But my issue with this card is that once again, we don't have any home. There's not like, you know, any Noxus mid-range. But maybe eventually if Swain goes to 12 to level up, then we maybe can see it there. Third, and spoiler alert, maybe the best new card that we got is Boadir of the Blackened Ice. 8 mana, 8/8 that when it's summoned, summons 2 frozen throws and advances them only to 2. Interesting card, especially when you use it with things like Sigil and like you cheat it out on turn like 5, turn 6. Then this guy just goes kind of crazy. I know this is a card for throws, even though maybe it can be used there as well. But I think, especially with Sigils, this card seems crazy. As well, it's fair, so it's also in the region that summons the Sigil. So I'm a big fan of this card, and I definitely expect this card to see quite a lot of play. Portia, 9 mana 9/9, that on play manifests a Titan follower and set its stats to 1/1 and the cost to 0. I think interesting card once again. My only issue, especially when you compare it to the next to the left, is that you really need to hit things like Citra, you need to really hit things like Adekan, and then maybe this is better. But like that you don't know what you're gonna hit, there's little bad units that you can get from the Titanic. I would be like kind of scared of this, like just rolling the dice, right? As well, it's in Battle City. That's kind of weird region to use with sigils and stuff. So I'm not fan of this at all. Chemtech Drake, 8 mana, 8/6. When you play a spell, draw 1. When you draw while you have a full hand, deal 1 to the dynamic nexus. It's interesting card, but might be too slow. And especially like, it can just be in play. It doesn't do anything when you play it. It just, it's a unit. Of course, you then play some spells and draw. But, and the effect that it deals the 1 damage when you have full hand is kind of whatever, to be honest. Like, you need to draw so many cards to do actually some impact for damage. As well, you still burn the cards. It would be kind of interesting if it was like deal the 1 damage instead of the drawing card, That would be kind of maybe a little bit better. But this way, I just don't think it will see much play, to be honest. Dune Shallower. 5 mana 9/6 fearsome spell shield. To play me, kill an ally or one of 3 your mana gems 3 times. Apparently, it should work that you can like kill 2 allies and 1 mana gem only, or like 1 ally or 2 mana gems, and you can just like alternate this way. Very interesting card. Very similar to things like Ancient Crocodile that we already have in the game. So that's my only issue that I have with this card. That maybe Ancient Crocodile is a better card than this, but it might see some play. Also, Spell Sheet is a good bonus compared to the Ancient Crocodile. And first time is kind of scary keyword, so it might see some play. I wouldn't be surprised if we see it maybe in some, once again, Kindred Nesters that we already mentioned multiple times today. Sefirsa, 8 mana, 8/7. Sea Monster Dragon, that's deep. When you spend mana to play under the unit, create a random card in hand to equal of your cost. It costs 0 and it's fleeting. Interesting deep card. Especially it's very interesting because I don't know if you play deep, but very often in things that happen to deep is that in the late game, because you tossed your raw deck, you don't have really things like spells and stuff. And this can eventually give you maybe some spells for like your units, because very often, like, your sea monsters in the late game, because you have like things like Nautilus on burst or something, cost like 2-3 mana, and then you can get maybe some spells, some combat tricks, because like really in the late game you have like only like champion spells, and that's only like you're really using, and maybe some sea monster from Nautilus level 2. And that's something that, that's maybe interesting in this card. But I don't know if it's like something that you want to main deck, and maybe it can be like good hit from things like Jaw Hunters, that you're gonna be maybe using the other way. But overall kind of interesting card that can maybe see some play in deep. World Protector, 5 mana 4/5. When I'm summoned or you summon a Titanic ally, healer on Nexus 3. Really understated, really bad unit. I don't really see why would you play this card in a deck. It doesn't really advance your thingy. It like keeps you alive, it heals you, but that's all. And I don't think you really will not play something like this, even in some all-in Titanic decks, because it doesn't, it doesn't accomplish really anything for you. And the card is just bad, yeah. The Kingfisher, 9 mana 8/8. When I'm summoned, draw 1 of each champion from your deck. Each round, the first time you summon a champion or ally. Very interesting card. My only concern, once again, if I compare it to the 8 mana Ferret card, also like you can just, this can just die. Also, it costs like 9 mana. Like I have too many concerns about this card, and I don't think it really is good. Of course, you can do some funny things that you're gonna draw, for example, Lucian, and then you have like 1 mana rally. But then you need to play Lucian in your deck, and that's not something that you really want. I don't really expect this to see play, to be honest. And maybe I'm gonna be surprised, but I think this is just much worse. And it's not a reliable Rincon that you want to go for. The last new card, Spectral Ironhound, 6 mana 5/3. To play me, kill an ally. When I'm summoned, summon a 1000 Claw Deadwinder. That is 6 mana 8 for a threesome. Very interesting card. Once again, gonna mention it, Kindred Nesters. And I think this guy is pretty good. I said, and especially things like that Nasus, maybe Nasus stage or something like that. On first 6 mana, just playing two big units. But compared to like really to like things like Jolane, that you just like play a big unit. But of course, this contains two big units, so I can definitely see some play with this card. And funny thing, if you circulate this Ironhound, it does work because you don't need to kill the ally to summon the 6 drop, right? So that's something also very interesting. This is my tiers of the new cards. I think that Boadir's by far the best. Spectre the second. Trusty Andere, Firespitter, and Dune Shallower are pretty good as well. And then, we have maybe like more of the mean cards, Kingfisher, Chemtech Drake, and Sefirsa. I think they can see maybe some play, and maybe I will be surprised. And I don't expect Portia or Well Protected to see any play at all. But this is my overall thinking, and I do think that Border is by far the best card, to be honest. Something also to mention that we're getting the patch on 8. As well, on 18, we're having Eternal Open. And on 25th, we have Standard Legends Qualifier. Definitely something to mention. And if you fighting for world spoons and stuff. On 27, we're gonna have the ladder cutoff, so definitely something to keep in mind. Overall, I think the patch and the new cards are pretty hype. I'm definitely looking forward to play again. And tomorrow you can also be looking for new episode of our podcast. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching and see you next time.